Welcome back, everybody, to another thrilling episode of Thrive as Your Programming Coach 2Js. This is your host, Jeremy Jones. Today we're going to talk about pacing when it comes to workouts like the Filthy 50 and why this workout still comes up in the programming. All right, so the Filthy 50 is one of my favorite sort of old school chippers. Now, it's not the best designed workout in my mind. I feel like we've come a long way in the last decade or so since this workout's come around. But I do like to have these workouts that have, hundreds of thousands of data points, especially on things like Beyond the Whiteboard. And it kind of harkens back to the past. And it's not a bad workout. It's just that I like it because it just has that established benchmark status, right? So we don't have too many of these workouts. Like I said, I have about 100 or so. That's why they're showing up usually about twice a week that I like to go back to and rotate through. But it is one of the longer workouts. And one of the reasons why I like this workout is we don't tend to do many workouts that are in that sort of, high 20s to mid 30s range. We don't do them very often, but by doing lots of intelligent work in the the 10, 15, 20 minute range, we can, and then using good pacing, we can still complete these workouts in a decent amount of time and see those improvements by getting stronger and getting more efficient. And we still do get a lot of those adaptations in the different metabolic pathways that we don't have to go long to still be able to perform kind of a longer Metcon. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to carry over to extremely long endurance efforts, like in the hour and a half range or whatever, like a real endurance event. But we do see some carryover. So for the amount of bang for our buck that we get is usually spent in those shorter workouts because it pays off for the longer workouts. If people start training for 45-minute, hour and a half long events, they aren't necessarily going to see a lot of improvement on their shorter workouts and on their strength and everything, and it's going to take a lot more time. So that's why we gravitate toward the shorter workouts. All right, so for pacing this workout, let's go through this real quick. So the warm-up is a little bit different. Instead of having a prescribed warm-up, you can do your own warm-up, and I do recommend maybe taking some people through some basic movement stuff. But this is one of those days we have 10 things to kind of go over. It's still good to kind of teach all these movements and have people practice them. So instead of having a dedicated warm-up, this is just one of the cases where it's like, have people do a row or an easy run before class, maybe do some stretching on their own, and then just take everyone through 5 to 10 reps of all the movements listed, right? So you talk about the box jump, everyone does a few box jumps, do some jumping pull-ups, talk about that, and then you just go through all the movements so that there's no ambiguity or confusion about what loads people should be using or what the technique is going to be. And then of course you can also give scaling options. If you watch people do 5 or 10 reps, you can scale them up or down according to what you think is going to be best for them that day. And so that's going to take a considerable amount of time, combined with this workout taking a lot of time. That we just need to take that into account, right? So instead of having a dedicated warm up that is separate from all the movements that are here, that's just going to make it harder to fit everything in class. So we'll do some ankle mobility. This is definitely an ankle workout with the box jumps, the burpees where we're jumping and landing, and then the double unders. And the jumping pull-ups too, right? If people are bouncing off their ankles like they should be, it tends to be very ankle centric. So we just want to make sure people's ankles are feeling good. They have that range of motion and suppleness that's going to prevent any tweaks or sprains. And then of course we're skipping all the skill work and everything because we got so much stuff to get through. So from a timing standpoint, this workout has a 35-minute cutoff. That means you are going to want to start this off at no later than 25 minutes after. So that's going to, you're going to want to get through kind of the mobility stuff and any sort of warm-up stuff at least 10 to 15 minutes in. Then you'll have about 10 minutes to make sure everyone's set up right. As usual, when it comes to this workout, I think I find it best to just have everyone, in the morning class, set up the boxes in one corner of the gym, and then they do their jumping pull-ups over here. That's my rig. And then the kettlebells are somewhere else, and then just leave the equipment out, or leave the bulk of it out, so that each class, it's just less time to set up all the equipment. They can just go from, they can come use the equipment from the previous classes, and then the last class of the day has to put it away. So the very first class and the very last class have a little bit of extra time on the setup and tear down, but it does save time even for them, because they're not having to do both setup and tear down. So for pacing this workout, now one of the things I like to point out is that, and I didn't make it a big emphasis here in the write-up, but it is in the coaching tips, and that is that that you can do everything in any order, but we just want to see that the wall balls, wall balls, burpees, and double unders must be completed at the end. And so that means that for these first 7 movements, because there's 10 movements total, these first 7 movements, they can be done in any order. And this eliminates the problems for equipment. So you won't need, if you have a class of 15 people, you won't need 15 boxes. You won't need 15 GHD machines or whatever. You can basically set up 5 or 6 stations for each, and then people can kind of pick where they want to start and how they want to mix and match. There isn't a huge advantage to changing up this order. The only time that we've seen, and we did a bunch of testing of this, is if you change up these wall balls, burpees, and double unders. If you spread these out, if you start with the double unders because you're fresh and you can do 50 unbroken. If you if you spread out some of the movements, like putting the wall balls separate from the hip extensions, that's also really huge. Putting the burpees somewhere else, or maybe putting those at the very end because you can just do those without too much technique or whatever. That will change the sort of the stimulus or the strategy of the workout enough to where it makes a big difference on the point. So they can do these in any order. It's just that they need to do these last 3. And the other thing we found is that usually gyms have enough wall balls and jump ropes that there won't be any equipment log jams. So that's why we do it. So they can do these 7 in any order. Obviously, it's best if they try to do it in order, but it's not a requirement, and it's still RX if they do. So from a strategy standpoint, if they are going to do it in order, understanding, okay, how do I get through the box jumps and then jumping pull-ups quickly? For most people, depending on where they're at, I'd say that, for beginners, they're going to be doing the Dirty 30 versions. They're going to do 30 of each, but it still sort of applies. They should try to go through these first 4 movements as quickly as possible, almost like treating that like a Metcon. In and of itself. And then we get to these knees to elbows. And I'm okay with people using the rings just because 50 knees to elbows is extremely taxing on the grip and really hard on people's elbows and shoulders because of that the grip requirement if they use a pull-up bar. If they can have the more neutral grip, palms facing in, it takes a lot of that strain off of the shoulders and the elbows and makes the knees to elbows maybe a little bit easier for some people, but it does make it safer for their shoulders or whatever. But even then, people who are pretty good at these, they're going to still have to break this up into sets of 10 or 15. So they're going to be recovering a little bit. So we want to push that kind of cardiorespiratory system up through this movement, and then the knees to elbows. We go get a set right away. Take a few breaths, start catching our wind, do another set, and break the knees to elbows up into very small sets. And then we can attack these other movements, again, with a little bit more intensity up through the wall balls, right? So then as we approach the end of the wall balls, that's when we may slow down a little bit so that we can get through the burpees. Now, the burpees are one of those movements that people will start to go really slow on. And what's weird about burpees is if you start crawling down and coming up on one knee and all that actually takes more energy than just doing a proper burpee. So it's better that people kind of do the burpee fairly fast and then stand up and rest, or drop to the floor and then lay on the floor for a second and then pop up and jump and lay back down again, instead of this really slow grind. I don't recommend people do 10 fast burpees and then walk around. Although some people like that, I think that it's better to have a more steady pace. So maybe a few burpees and then a shorter rest is good. But the idea is that they should be going down and up. If they go down fast, they're working with gravity and they're not doing extra work because there's already plenty of work. And then of course we got the double unders at the end. So people are going to want to pace to get their best score, because this is a benchmark that does show up, usually once or twice a year. We did this one back about 6 months ago. So for those people who did it 6 months ago, hopefully we'll see some PRs on that. And that's one of the reasons why we want them to pace their score and then record it, right? There is no cash out here. Let's talk about the Dirty 30 option again. So again, if this is someone's first time doing this, they should just do 30 of each. The Filthy 50 is not a beginner workout. And even if they've been with you for up to a year or so, go ahead and have just everybody does the 30 version. Now, if they do the 30 version and they finish it under 20 minutes, then they can do, they can do the Filthy 50 next time. Or if they want a little bit more, let's say they do the Dirty 30 version, they finish it in 15 minutes, which I've seen. Then you just have them do 20, go back through everything like a second round, and they do 20 of everything. So they still did the full amount of work. It's just a lot easier if you break it up into 2 sets. Is another way to approach this workout. Other ways to scale it, actually, if you just take out the knees to elbows and drop that to something like 30 or 25, if you want to cut it in half, do 25 knees to elbows and then 25 burpees. This workout you'll shave off 5 minutes for a lot of people just on those 2 movements. So it definitely changes the workout if you do that. But again, maybe they've done the Dirty 30, but they're not quite ready for the Filthy 50. Say, look, I want you to do 50 of everything. When you get to the knees to elbows, just spend 2 minutes on it, right? And then however many you get. And then same thing goes when it comes to the burpees. Instead of doing 50 burpees, maybe 3 minutes. Spend 3 minutes on burpees, because a lot of times the burpees will end up taking 5+ minutes when people are really tired. And then that way they can still sort of get into the scaling guide that we're looking for and under the cutoff. Now, one of the reasons why I put the cutoff in here was because this is a benchmark. So, for people who are maybe attempting it their first time, if they're 40 reps into their wall ball and they're at 29 minutes, you don't want to stop them, right? They've already gotten so far through the workout. Or if they're partway through their burpees, you don't want to stop them. You want to let them keep going. The 35-minute cutoff is there so that that if people start this workout at 25 after, that they're going to be shut down when the hour for the class is up, right? But we don't, if people are, especially when they're doing it as prescribed for their first time, we don't want them to get 80, 90, 95% of the way there, and then you shut them down because they're after the scaling guide. Let them continue on so they can finish the workout as prescribed, have this big win, and it's something that you guys can all celebrate in the class. But let's jump over to the weekly overview, because we got some fun stuff this week. So you can see here it's week 11 of the calendar year, week 2 of the strength focus. So remember, we've got some longer sort of workouts and programming. Filthy 50 on a Monday. So we're just throwing that at people to get them a long Metcon and make sure that they don't get totally reliant on the fact that Mondays are always lifting days. For people who love to lift all the time, it's good to get them to do a Metcon every once in a while. And for people who avoid Mondays because there's lifting a lot, this will kind of encourage them that, hey, you shouldn't skip Mondays because sometimes there's Metcons as well. Then we've got our back and box squats here on Tuesday, and a pretty decent Metcon with some single unders. And I've mentioned in previous videos that we're in a little bit of a double under or jump rope focus. So we've got double unders here. We got single unders. Shouldn't be too bad because of the it's only 50 double unders, and then this is actually single unders, so it shouldn't be too hard on people's ankles. Then we've got a skill session. So the combination of this long workout on Monday, and then a shorter but still pretty intense workout here on Tuesday. We just want to give people a little bit of a break. So if they come in on Wednesday, if they hit these 3 days in a row, we just want to make sure they're not overdoing it. And so we've got some overhead, some skill session on carries, and there's a cash out for people who maybe they missed the Filthy 50 and they still want to get a good workout. They can do the cash out. And then we've got another pretty brutal workout here on Thursday. So you can see that's one of the reasons why we snuck that skill session in midweek, is to break this up instead of putting another full Metcon or full intensity training day. So we've got Jack, which is kind of similar to Filthy 50 with the 20 minutes but a lot smaller sets, right? So we've got push presses, kettlebell swings, and box jumps, which all do exist here, but a little bit heavier loads. But I like this one because it they're smaller sets, and so you can and it's just and they're all different movement patterns, so we just keep moving for the entire 20 minutes. Then we're back to our squats on Friday. And then we've got a cool new workout that people can have a little bit of variety with. They can split it up how they want. And then a team workout on Saturday. And then we're doing our max effort and year-end goal testing the second time this year. So we did one of these at the very beginning of the year. So we're at the end of week 11. This is basically 12 weeks apart. So people can retest some of those things they tested at the beginning of the year. Or if they haven't yet, plan for their what they plan on trying to achieve throughout the rest of the year, right? So make sure that they're making progress on those things. Now, if they didn't test out their push presses, the heavy push presses from the last cycle, this would be a good time for them to fit that in as one of the things that they're testing. The other thing I wanted to point out too is that we've got a decent amount of squatting going on right now because of the squat focus. And sometimes the squats are on the same days as the heavy squats, and then we may have squats on the next day. And I was comfortable putting this in here because this is a considerably light squat, and we're doing teams of 2. So people are going to be splitting this up. You can see here we've got some fairly light goblet squats that can be broken up. And it's a total of 25 in the workout. And then the next day, we're doing sets of 20, but it's spread from 2 people. So it's 10 per set on average. And then, we're looking for, maybe, 5 to 7 rounds. So we're looking for 60 reps combined. So 30 reps per person. Or excuse me, 60 reps per person if there's 10, if they get 6 rounds of 10 each. But it's spread out with all this other stuff. And one of the things that characterizes Thrive Street programming is I don't do a lot of huge sets, and so it's easier to program on back-to-back days. It's a little bit more homogeneous. We do the movements more frequently, more total body stuff day to day, instead of focusing in on one particular movement pattern and doing 150 reps of it, so that then they're trashed and they can't do that movement for the next 2 days. By doing smaller sets and varying the size of the set, the loads, the types, we can then sometimes program them on back-to-back days. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot, and thrive on.